Connor Group is a world-leading accounting advisory firm. Where we built our brand is we've taken 253 companies public in the technology, life science, and growth industry space. The companies we've taken public are now worth $3.3 trillion in valuation and generate $330 billion in revenue. At the most basic level, we want to make sure that accounting foundation and that technology stack are ready for our companies to grow and scale. My role, I'm the managing partner.
All right, now this year's summit is titled IPO Spring. So what's the meaning behind that name?
Nature is brilliant, that you have seasons and there's a logic behind it. Winter is a time where resources come back into the soil, so the things in the spring that should grow do grow with the light and the sun. Markets are exactly the same. We just went through 2 years of winter, IPO winter, 2022 and 23. 24, we saw a nice rebound, 30%. Now companies are getting ready. There's so many economic wins behind our back, but companies, they've been in the gym, right? The profitability and the revenue growth gym, they're ready to go out there. Last comment, private equity and venture capital have 1,400 unicorns that are now ready globally to go out there. So the timing is great for a market in 25 and 26.
Now, we're here at the 12th Annual IPO Summit. Tell me, what can we expect from this year's summit, and what are some of the standout panels and speakers?
We had standing room audience today, right? I mean, we had 715 companies, but it was 1,100 professionals between New York, virtual, and San Francisco. People were voting with their feet. There's a lot of interest of what are the things that I need to really start thinking about. The words was optimism and readiness, because it takes 12 to 18 to 24 months to really make sure that your company is ready to operate as a public company. So that was the feeling and the vibe. People were taking notes, they were paying attention to the panels, but it was also very hands-on. It was sort of like you're listening to instructions because you're like, you know what? I need to go back and tell others this. The panels were outstanding. We actually had some amazing companies, the CFO from Warby Parker, the CFO from Kava, the general counsel from Klaviyo, Tony Kim from BlackRock, Morgan Stanley. The conference is designed to have people share things who have experienced it and done it. I think that's the best way to do it. If you can add value to an audience, that's when they can really not only be engaged, but then take it to action.
Now, one of your panels was actually with pro athletes speaking on the psychology of greatness. So how does that mindset play into the IPO journey?
We really think that there are three pillars when you think about taking your company public. There's psychology, there's strategy, and there's tactics. Everyone will talk about the strategies. Actually, they'll probably even talk about the tactics. But the psychology, to me, I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan. Tony says that, business is 80% psychology and 20% mechanics. I've really found that to be true. Like, what is your mindset? How do you influence yourself? How do you influence others? How do you create a compelling vision and execute on it? How do you build an outstanding team, work through adversity, resilience, discipline, focus? Those are all psychology type of concepts. So what we wanted to do was we realized that athletes and executives have so much in common. They're both elite performers, right? There's like a 0.001% chance you become a professional athlete. There's like a 0.001% chance as an executive that you're gonna have a company that maybe could go public or that you get it out there. So what are those common themes to be an elite performer?
Now, Jim, you and I were just chatting about who's actually in attendance here. We have 600 US companies and 115 international companies from 40 countries that are attending the IPO Summit. So what's driving this international interest in IPOs?
The US capital markets are the hottest in the world. I mean, if you're an international company, you want to not only get access to US institutional investors, but you also want US comps, right, in terms of valuations. So there's a lot of attraction on that. We also have a lot of economic headwinds behind our back in the US as well. So you have a vibrant economy, it's growing, right? We're sort of moving into this sort of next phase of sort of economic development, but the US is the market to be in. If you're an international company, nothing is better than to sort of explore the US markets, but we're gonna see a lot of international companies looking to list with the NYSE, in the future.
All right, and how about the industries? What industries are you seeing that are in attendance?
I'm gonna do three broad buckets if that's okay. So the first I'd call sort of that IT technology space. And I would call that AI, cloud computing, cybersecurity, but also software SaaS. Probably about a third of the companies, but that's the digital economy, right? Those are ones that are really hot. They're getting private financings, but a lot of sort of momentum into the public markets. The second is healthcare. And so that would be life sciences, value-based care, as well as med device. Look at longevity traits of populations, right? This is an area that needs to continually be invested in more, but I actually think biotechnology and health technologies is a huge competitive advantage of the US. So there's a lot there. The third I would call is growth industries. And so that would be everything. We're seeing a lot of e-commerce, we're seeing consumer products, we're seeing also energy as well. So I think those are some really good spaces. If you look at that holistically, that's quite a breadth. I think that's also indicative of markets that are trading at all-time highs. There are a lot of sort of quality companies, quality industries, and when you see strong economic conditions, it's not just a narrow vertical, there's breadth.
Okay, let's talk about the IPO market. How would you describe the current state of the IPO market?
The current state is, I think this first half of this year, we're gonna see the larger companies going out, right? So these are ones that typically were getting ready last year. And so I think that's gonna be sort of the ones that the bankers are testing the waters with. What's not being seen underneath sort of the surface of the water is the readiness work. And we're seeing, so at Connor Group, we had a 70% increase in companies that are getting IPO ready for 25 and 26 markets. So we have 106 clients versus 62 the year before that they're like, hey, this next 1 to 2 years, it's game on. That's what we're seeing out there as well, is it's like we need to be investing. The boards and the investors are saying, it's not just about profitability anymore, it's growth, but let's also make sure we can be opportunistic when the conditions are ready. And that's what's happening in the markets.
And how is the IPO market post the presidential election?
I think what's been good is you saw sort of that initial sort of bump and pop. That we had the economic optimism. I think there was also, hey, we're gonna have more deregulation, right? Tariffs has been an interesting one, right? So we're gonna let the dust settle, but I think that's created a little bit of volatility of, hey, there's some uncertainty. But what's really interesting is once that, it's not noise, but once sort of those messages are coming through, you can't overreact on it. So I think people are like, okay, there's a lot of change going on. We expected that with the new administration, but now let's focus on our business. Let's focus on the things that we can control. I think it's actually gonna be quite good on the deregulation side. There'll be changes in the SEC. There'll also be changes, probably on the PCAOB as well, right? Like what are the auditor standards? But you're seeing a lot more M&A activity. We just heard in the conference today, the bankers are super excited. We coined the term IPO spring. It was also, the term was coined M&A spring. So it was like, hey, there's a lot going on the transaction side. Put your seatbelts on, there's gonna be some excitement ahead.
Jim, are there any surprises that could impact the IPO market this year?
We probably couldn't have predicted a lot of stuff that happened in the past 3, 4, 5 years, but I'll put 3 buckets out there. One is I still think there are, sort of economic wins. We're kind of seeing what's happening on inflation and there's interest rates as well. I don't think it affects as many of the companies out there, but it does affect the cost of capital, right? So that's no doubt that's gonna be one of them. I think how public policy might impact the markets as well could also impact things. We have a lot of sort of probably maybe spending rationalization going on in the public sector, but just all those type of things I think have to work through this system. The third, I'm gonna call it externalities. We still have potential things going on in the Middle East, right? We have the China, we have sort of Russia, Ukraine. Feels like some of those things are being resolved, but we just don't know on that. So I think that's part of the calculus, and I think it's been really good advice of there's things you can control and things that you can't. The best thing to do is build a great business. That's what you can control. That's what you want to focus on. All this other stuff will kind of work its way through, but if your company, you have a great business, the markets will be available for you to do transactions.
And what are you seeing that the press and others don't see?
I think a lot of it is, when I mentioned that stat of we have 70% more clients getting ready, no one sees that. And so we have companies that are saying, okay, it's kind of like in the shadows. There's a great phrase called greatness in the shadows. The way you build greatness is what happens when no one's watching and it's off to the side. That's what companies are doing. So they're getting what we call the long poles in the tent. They're getting their systems in order, right? They're getting their governance with their board. They're getting controls. All those things really matter. I think that they're also getting an understanding of their business. How can I predict it? How can I give annual guidance or quarterly guidance? How can I make sure I can beat and raise? All those type of things. We're seeing companies now, I use that analogy of being in the gym, right? Like, summer's coming out and you want to look great, right? The springtime is the time and opportunity to renew your membership, but also really double down on your cardio and your strength training.
All right, and finally, Jim, tell me, what's your outlook for the IPO market in the next 12 to 18 months?
I really see us moving, hopefully it's going to be from a good to great. So a good is we did 225 IPOs last year. That was a 30% increase. Our kind of sense is like maybe 250, 275. So like that other 20, 30% increase this year, that would be really healthy. But I think it kind of puts us on a trajectory. The great markets, maybe not always sustainable. 2021 was 1,100 IPOs. The year before was 500. It feels like that 300 to 400 sweet spot is kind of a really good thing. It's not too frothy, but I think it really gives an opportunity for quality companies that have a good understanding of their business, profitability, as well as growth to get out in the market. I like that. I like that kind of equilibrium.
All right, well, Jim, it's been wonderful to talk with you today. Thank you for stepping away from the IPO Summit to join me. It's been a great conversation.
Judy, wonderful seeing you again. Thank you so much.